What are the chances that Aaron Donald unretires, and did the Rams win the draft? That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramily, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor and join the party over on YouTube, getting close to 13,000 subscribers. So hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell, and also let us know, what are the percentage chances that you think that Aaron Donald will return next season? My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade. SI, Dodgers Nation, 24/7 Sports. Now the Rams for Locked On. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre, half, and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's entering his 9th season covering your Los Angeles Rams. The People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's show, did the Rams win the draft? Could Aaron Donald come back? Les Snead had some very interesting comments about Aaron Donald and a possible return. And also, Guardian Caps in the regular season. Are you down with it? We're going to talk about that. But first, this episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I have to admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, Travis, so let's get right into it. Les Snead had a really funny interview with Rich Eisen. I like the part where he was analyzing Rich as a prospect. So if you didn't go see that, I thought that was pretty awesome. But the big takeaway, though, was, of course, they got into Aaron Donald talk. And he had some very interesting comments to say. He said about Aaron Donald, I did mention to Aaron that going back to our Super Bowl run, there was a player by the name of Eric Weddle who kind of jumped into the playoffs, and we signed him to the practice squad, and we elevated him for 4 straight games to a Super Bowl championship. So I did mention if we happen to get to the playoffs again, maybe we'll circle back and see if the cup's not quite filled, but that's just a rumor. I doubt Aaron's going to do that. So there's a chance. And it believes, to me, it's the organization just saying, look, maybe it's a 1% chance, but it's not a 0% chance.
The door is clearly open. I think that's the biggest takeaway from me is the Rams are at least two things. Number one, they're crossing their fingers and at least letting him know that, look, the door's open for you at all times. The door is ready for you to walk through and rejoin this team whenever you would like to do it. So just so he knows, the universe knows that they're still in the Aaron Donald business if Aaron Donald wants to do it. I think that's number one. Number two is, I don't think he says that for no reason. I don't think it's likely Aaron Donald comes back. I don't think that it's even a small chance that he comes back. I think it's like you said, Doug. I think it's like a 1% chance type of thing. But do you even say that if it's that low of a number? I'm not quite so sure. So let me kind of back up to where I'm thinking on all of this. Aaron Donald is still one of the best players in the league last year. Aaron Donald is a football player. Aaron Donald knows how to do one thing, right? What he's done in his professional life is play football. He takes incredible care of his body. He's not somebody that struggles to get into shape. He's not somebody that looks to be doing football because he has no better option. He does it because he loves it. I do think that they know that, and I think that human nature is undefeated, that he's going to see teams. He's going to see football. He's going to see the Rams. The Rams might be pretty good, and he thinks that he could drop back in at some point, whether that's early, middle, or late. I just don't know if a guy that is that committed to what he did for that long. I understand football hurts. I understand that it's not, easy to just walk back through that door. I get it, but no one has said anything to me. In fact, the opposite has been told to me from the people I've talked to, that he's not coming back. I'm not closing the door either. It just feels like there's just a little bit left. Weddle's a great example of being able to do this. Aaron Donald is 1,000 times better than Eric Weddle, and Eric Weddle was pretty good. Eric Weddle had been out for a while. Eric Weddle had a big impact on the Rams winning the Super Bowl, going through that playoff run. Aaron Donald could walk into the facility, walk onto the field in week 10, and be the best player at his position. That's how good he is at it. He didn't have a lot of drop-off. I think there's a chance. No other reason than human nature, and that there just doesn't seem like the universe has completely slammed the door on that.
I agree. And I think you made a point that I was thinking about too, is that Les Snead knows what he's doing. He knows what he's saying. Everything is calculated. He knows that this is going to get to Aaron Donald. He knows that he's going to see this and maybe he'll laugh it off or something like that. But for me, it's the itch. If that itch comes back, even just a tiny bit, you can't fight that feeling. He knows the only way to scratch that itch is to get back and hear those sounds of pads hitting pads and helmets hitting helmets, maybe Guardian helmets hitting Guardian helmets, right? And him getting back in the mix. But he also would go on to say Les Snead, and I think this is, to me, what is the most difficult part to get past. He says, Aaron's one of those guys where he's so principled. He might feel uncomfortable that, you know what, I didn't go through those other 18 weeks with the guys. I'm not sure I can go through the playoffs with them. Not sure we might tempt in. No breaking news here. So that is kind of the Aaron Donald that I see. Someone who says, look, is that kind of maybe cutting the line here where I wasn't a part of this journey and I wasn't a reason why we amassed this record where we're at and we had a good season? Maybe that he has a tough time getting around that. And also, too, it's the trenches, right? I mean, it's tough to kind of ratchet it up and ramp up in the trenches where you're just going in your first playoff game, you're getting doubled and triple team, right? So I do think it's more of a, if he's going to come back, it'd be earlier. Like, I don't think it's the thing where he'd come back for the playoffs. I think if he wants to come back, he's going to make that decision a lot earlier than then.
I agree. If this is something that could happen, I don't think it's, okay, hey, it's week 17 or it's wild card weekend and he walks through the door ready to go. I don't think it's that. I think that it's probably sooner than that. As far as the part about him feeling like he's cutting the line, not Aaron Donald. Right. No one has ever thought that Aaron Donald does anything other than all the work and then all the work again and then all the work a third time. That he's not, this isn't Charles Haley just showing up. This isn't, where a guy just, okay, I'm going to show up and try to play for a couple of weeks. This is somebody that has done the work. He's going to stay in shape. He's going to study if that's what he wants to. There's no, I don't think his heart's in this. He just doesn't want to go through camp. He doesn't want to go through the bumps and bruises of a 17-week campaign. Nobody's questioning Aaron Donald's commitment. No one's questioning his toughness or his technique or anything like this. Maybe he just needs a break from it. Maybe he needs to realize that he misses it. Maybe he needs to realize that this is something that you can't go do when you're 40. This isn't something you can circle back to later. That this is kind of, you have to do it when you're a younger person, and he still has a ton of ability. I don't know, man. It just feels like it's not over yet. It feels like the Aaron Donald story doesn't end the way that it's ended so far. I feel like there's one more chapter in that book.
Yeah, he's just 32 years old, right? And the way that this team is built, the way I look at it now is, wait a minute, did we just kind of stumble upon possibly a really, really good defense because you invested so heavily on that side of the ball? Imagine if you have those guys work out, and then you add Aaron Donald, a veteran, to that mix that's only going to make those players better and accelerate their development. So I look at it from that standpoint. Here's another thing I do know too, Travis. This is not going to be one of those players that lets it go, okay? No. He's going to be in the gym. He's going to be in great shape. I mean, you saw Michael Jordan. He went to play baseball, and he was ready to go right away. These guys are genetic freaks, man. These guys don't play by the same rules. He's going to be okay physically, but I think the biggest thing for me is I see people out there saying, oh, he's going to wait and see how they look going into the playoffs. No, he'll have to identify it early on and say, no, this team is going to have a good record going to the playoffs. They are going to have a successful season. Then I'll jump on when I do. And when that is hopefully a couple games in, training camp, mid-season, something like that. But I highly doubt it'll be towards the end of the season.
I do too. And I think it could be one of those things that, let's say you're in week 4 or 5. Just, speculating here. And he looks at that defense. He goes, that defense is better than I think a lot of people thought it would be. But if I were a part of that, all of a sudden it goes to a whole nother level. Imagine if Aaron Donald were on the team and they just drafted the way that they drafted. You don't think that that's a defense that you'd want to be excited about? You don't think that that's something that he could drop back into and have an incredible impact on? I think that it needs to look good. It needs to play well. And look, if they're, in games that are 38-35 every week, I don't think he's got a ton of interest in something like that. But if they're in games that are, 35-17, and there's a handful of those, it's like, look, this team, if we could get even better on that side of the ball, I don't think it's going to happen, Doug, but I'm not closing.
Yeah, I'm with you too. Like, I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think it is, but I wouldn't fall off my chair if it did either. I'd be like, you know what? I get it. Most simply put, he's a football player. He's still an incredible football player. He's still a young man. What's he going to do for the next 40 years? Right. And you've only got a few years left to where he could still be Aaron Donald. And I think he's going to realize that. And I think that desire at least is going to bubble up. Whether he acts on the desire or not, that's the big question. But I don't know, man. I'm not a zero. I'll put it to you that way. I'm not a zero. I'm not in double digits, but I'm not a zero either.
And you say you wouldn't fall off your chair, but I'm telling you that Aaron Donald, I'm back tweet would be absolutely electric. Right? But like you said, it's not a zero. In the words of the greatest character of any movie ever, Lloyd Christmas. So you're saying there's a chance.
There's a chance.
So there's a chance, baby. It's all we need. But coming up next, did the Rams win the draft? That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
It is winner take all right now. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel, they're giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. It's a great time, right? How great are the playoffs? How great. You watch the Knicks and the Sixers do what they do. Every one of those games is nuts. Imagine if you had a little something going on in that too, right? And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. You heard me right. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money line, player props, and more. You can take the playoffs to a whole nother level. As good as they are, they can get better. But you got to visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon, LOCKEDON, and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And of course, there's baseball. And of course, there's golf. There's really nothing that you can't do at FanDuel. Go right now, FanDuel.com/lockedon, and make every playoff shot count.
And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there. We appreciate you watching and listening to every episode of Locked On Rams. And you can join that Everyday Listeners Club too. Membership is completely free. We're running a post-draft special right now, so everything's completely free, and you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. All right, Travis, so dust is settled on the 2024 NFL Draft. The Rams have gotten really good grades top to bottom. You've seen some A's, you see some B's, some B pluses. The question is, did they win the draft? In my opinion is, did they win the draft? It's too early to tell. We know that. But I would say that you would have to include them in the list of winners if you're going to make a list for that draft.
Yeah, I think so too. And when you look around and you aggregate everybody, what they do and what they kind of graded or however you want to, categorize it, none of it is bad. None of it is even average. And I think that's a really good sign. The one criticism that you saw of the draft, I think is actually kind of in its own way a positive. The criticism being that they paid a pretty hefty price to move up and take Fiske, that they gave up next year's second round pick to move up and get Fiske to Carolina. That is a high price. But look, if that's the criticism, that means you did a pretty good job. That isn't hey, what the heck did they do right here? Or why did they take that guy? Or that guy couldn't play dead in a cowboy movie. Nobody is saying any of those things. This is a team that picked positions of need, that picked positions where, or I should say, picked players that were very highly rated. This wasn't, they didn't overreach in a lot of different places. They filled a special teams need, which is not sometimes an easy thing to do. I think that, like you said, it's going to take a year or two to be sure of which guy was the steal and maybe which guy was a little overvalued. But I think when this all shakes out, the 2024 draft is going to be a very good one for the Rams.
Yeah, and you mentioned that second round pick, and that's a big thing for me, because we know that it's the highest, the biggest overpay that a team has made in the last, long time. They really definitely paid some serious draft capital just to get up. But the big question for me is that pick next year the number 33 pick, or is it the number 64 pick? So only time will tell with that one. But I think they won the draft early in this draft, in the sense that you did get Jared Verse, a very high value player that's a day one starter, that is a proven player that you get with the number 19 pick, and it was seen as a bargain. Also, too, look, you get 3 day one starters, right? You get Fiske, you get Verse, you get Cardi, and then you also add a lot of depth to it, a lot of positions. I think if I had to have one criticism, I would say you waited a pretty long time. You didn't get a cornerback. You didn't get a wide receiver. And then you didn't get an inside linebacker until way later. So those would be my only kind of question marks. And if you had hit on some of those players, it would definitely help this team.
Yeah, I think the corner criticism is a fair one. I think that's something that it felt like they were going into. But, again, maybe they didn't see anybody that they like. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's not a matter of, okay, we need a corner, so let's just take one so we can say we took one. If you're looking around and what's available, you're like, that guy's not going to be able to play for us. That guy's not a good enough player to make our team. That guy's not going to be good enough to take us to where we want to go. Then don't take him. And so maybe it's a situation like that. I think that you have to look at the draft also in conjunction of what they've done in free agency, in conjunction of what they might be able to do during training camp and during the trade market. That Tre'Davious White and Darius Williams, these are guys that could come back and make a huge impact. And that position in need, a corner, maybe isn't quite what we thought. If White is the player that he is when he's healthy, they've got a shutdown guy. They've got a guy that's going to take the ball away. They have the ability to do that. So, corner was a missed opportunity, I guess, is one way to look at it. But they did address it a couple of different ways prior to that in free agency.
Yeah, I think that you said it best, is that they just didn't see that guy that they wanted. Everyone wanted Brendan Rice out of USC, right? Brendan Rice is not Jerry Rice, okay? So First of all, let's point that out. But you had 4 picks there in the 6th round. You didn't pick up a cornerback, inside linebacker. So that's the only thing that I would say, maybe you lose a little bit of points there. But if they don't think they had a guy that gives value at that position, then it's pointless. Then you just have a cornerback by name, inside linebacker by name. So that's the most important thing. You get guys that you think are going to fill those positions and actually provide depth. But how about this? Look, I mean, we're in 2024, right? And you have depth at a lot of different positions. You have young talent at a lot of different positions. 2 years ago in 2022, you had a bunch of superstars on big contracts and a bunch of league replacement players, right? Guys that were just fill-ins. So, I mean, I think they've really stockpiled this team very, very quickly. I think, are they a winner of this draft? I would say absolutely yes. I still give this draft an A, because of the sensible picks, the fact you needed to rebuild this defense, you got it with quality.
I like what you said about the depth, right? That this is the NFL is brutal. It is just a brutal league where guys, and look, let's be honest, you got to get a little lucky on the injury side of things, right? When the Rams won the Super Bowl a few years ago, they were pretty healthy, generally speaking. When they had the defense of their Super Bowl and they won, they won 5 games, it was a disaster on the health front. That just about everybody that was anybody got hurt and missed time. Donald goes down, Kupp goes down, Stafford goes down, the entire offensive line goes down, the entire backup offensive line goes down. You're just crushed by injuries. The only way you can try to mitigate that to some point is by having depth. And I think that they do have it. I think they have it where you need it. Now it looks like maybe defensive line, oddly enough, even with the departure of Aaron Donald, is a position of depth. You look at that offensive line, I think that's as deep and as solid a group as we've seen them have in a very, very long time. They have depth at running back. They have depth at quarterback for the first time in a very long time, where if Jimmy Garoppolo comes in and plays, I don't think anybody's crying in their beer. I mean, you don't want Matthew Stafford to go down, but somebody's got to come in. Garoppolo's not the worst person in the world to have as your number 2 quarterback. They have real depth for the first time at that position. I think that's a huge part, and that's what they've done through the draft too, is they've added guys that if they need to play, they can.
Yeah, and I see people out there still criticizing the trade up, saying, okay, they overpaid a 2nd and a 5th, and they should have just gone BPA, best player available at 52. Yeah. No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works in this franchise, right? If you want a guy, you got to be aggressive. You have to go up and get him. So I love the way they did it. I like what they did in this draft. I think they have a plan for the cornerback, wide receiver, and inside linebacker spot. And this is a team that they don't overvalue that position anyway as far as the linebackers go. But yeah, I couldn't be happier with what they did, especially after the Aaron Donald retirement. But like we talked about in the first segment, Donald comes back. You just completely take this defense to another stratosphere, and that's exciting to think about. But coming up next, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about the Guardian helmet in the NFL, how we could see them next season in the regular season. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know you're waiting for it. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but no way we can stop talking about it. There's just too much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. And the more you win together, the more awesome prizes that you unlock. And there is so much to get, like unique stickers that you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel all the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. I like the smashing of the buildings the best. That's one of my favorite things to see. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenge. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure and a robot pachinko machine. You heard it right. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it right now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Travis, one of our favorite things to talk about is uniforms, helmets, the aesthetics of the sport. So we had to hit this topic. And the NFL, they announced last week that they're adjusting their rules to allow players the option of using Guardian caps in regular season games to enhance their protection against head injuries. The league confirmed last Friday. NFL Executive Vice President Jeff Miller said the Guardian caps have contributed to a nearly 50% reduction in concussions for the position groups that wore them during those time periods. So some players think that like J.J. Watt said, it makes him feel like a bobblehead. To me, it would make players look like Juggernaut from the X-Men series. And I don't know. It would just take a lot of getting used to see these in a regular season game.
Okay, so I'm going to throw something at you and tell me if it sticks to you at all right now, because I'm old enough to remember when, right? We all know these ones. That the third and first base coaches wore baseball caps and it looked fine. And it's like, okay. And then somebody got hurt, unfortunately. And they said, all right, you got to throw on a batting helmet to coach third base. You got to wear a batting helmet to coach first base. And it looked absolutely ridiculous for about a week. And then you're like, oh, okay, whatever. And and now you look at it, and it doesn't even, you don't even look twice at it, right? I remember the first time you saw a baseball player come up with one of those pieces of plastic that kind of covers their jaw, and you're like, oh my God, you're wearing a softball helmet? And now it's like, yeah, a bunch of guys have them. It's not a big deal. We'll get used to it. That being said, it looks weird. It looks super weird. It does look bobbleheady. It does look so it just looks like something we're not used to. And I know, like you said at the top of this, D-Mac, I love the NFL helmets. I know it's goofy, but NFL helmets are really cool. I like the logos on the helmet. It's what defines it as an NFL game. When you see the Rams horns or you see the Dallas Cowboys star or whatever it is, those iconic helmets like that identify the league. And I don't know if they're going to, get out the colored pencils and draw something on the side of that thing, but it would look weird if you're covering up arguably the most iconic piece of equipment in the league. That being said, if it's cutting concussions in half, it's hard to argue that they shouldn't have them on.
Yeah, if a player wants to do this and it's within his right, and you're one of those guys in the trenches, right? Sure. You're running back, you're a offensive lineman, or anyone that wants to do it, yeah, more power to you, right? I mean, you absolutely should go for it. I think for me, though, these players, if someone tells these players that they lose any speed right? And you're not as fast, even just by a little bit. I think that players will have a tough time embracing that if that's the case. And there have been reports that show that players think that. So I think that's a big factor. But yeah, kind of going back to what you said about just the evolution of sports and the baseball helmets and things like that. Every time I see old video of hockey players playing without helmets, it freaking gives me the heebie-jeebies, man. It terrifies me.
Well,
it's crazy.
The hockey goalies without a mask, and then go back.
That
go
puck
back,
will kill you, and let worse hospitalize you. You know what I mean? Like,
it's insane. You go back, and there were guys in Major League Baseball that weren't wearing batting helmets. That was a thing that nobody, you just get in there with your cap on and hope you didn't take one off the noggin. There is evolution. Things do change. I would be shocked if they didn't find a way to logo those caps in the NFL the way that they would need to be. But I think you put your finger on the most important thing. If the players feel like they're sacrificing performance, they won't wear them. And if they feel like they're they might wear them at practice. They don't have to be at their absolute fastest or quickest or whatever at practice. But when it comes time to play, if they, even if it's not true, if they feel like it's impacting performance, I don't think you're going to see a ton of them.
Yeah, that's to say, there's like two parts of me. It's like there's a part of me that's like safety first, want these guys to be okay, and then there's a part of me that loves just the look of the NFL. And I can think of collecting mini helmets. I don't think I would have 32 mini little Guardian caps around my room, right, in like different colors, like we saw. I mean, everyone's out there looking like Barry Bonds' head in the steroid era, right? I mean, it's a weird look, but it would take some getting used to. But like you mentioned, all games, all sports evolve, and that's just the nature of all this. But I have seen some reports too that they're working on a way to get this technology to a certain degree inside the helmet. So that this would be just a temporary 2-year thing before they introduce this new helmet. So, but here's the thing, though. Even when you introduce new helmets, like Aaron Rodgers was wearing the old Riddell helmet for a long time. Guys are going to wear what they prefer. They're creatures of habit, whatever makes them comfortable.
Yes, you're right. I mean, the guys find something they like. They're not anxious to change it. That's for sure. I want everybody to be as safe as possible. Like you said, I don't want to be a part of the, the nanny state and say everybody, but at the same time, safety first. Yes. Here's the bottom line. Big, strong guys running very fast, hitting each other with their heads. You're going to have head injuries, and you do the best you can to try to eliminate them the best you can, but you're never getting to zero. So I guess we're getting as close as we can with this sort of stuff, but it's just the nature of football. Unfortunately, that guys are going to get their bell rung.
And all I'm saying, too, is if I have access to Doc Brown's DeLorean, I'm going back in time and I'm making Antonio Brown wear like 10 of these. Okay? It shouldn't be a choice for him. It should have been an absolute requirement. Imagine if Antonio Brown had this, would be a different world that we live. We wouldn't have CTESPN, as he calls himself. He calls himself CTESPN on Twitter, breaking stories.
Yeah, he Vontez Perfect did him bad. It all changed after that hit. It was not a great moment in Antonio Brown's life, that's for sure.
Yeah, Vontez Perfect definitely punching air with these new Guardian caps. But that's gonna do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And of course, you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. Until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.